Blog Talk Radio.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot, oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only Supernatural Girls.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker, and I am here without PK again. Sorry to report that, but she is still recovering. She has had several fractured vertebrae in her back, and as you know, that's quite painful. So our dear PK is in recovery, and I'm hoping to have her back on the show in another couple of weeks. But we also have some news, and that is this. Michelle Claire, the psychic medium, she is world-renowned, she's fabulous. She is going to be joining us as a co-host in a couple of weeks. So get ready to listen to her insightful questioning and comments in the weeks to come. And I also wanted to tell you, next week we've got a change of time. We are going to be interviewing the ghost hunters. They're coming on the show, and we will be going live at 9:30 next week instead of 7:30 Eastern Time. So be sure to make that note. You don't want to miss that show. It's going to be great. And just a couple more announcements. Go to our Facebook page. Lots of stories there, lots of UFO sightings, as usual. And one last mention of the property tax book, Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It, by attorney Patricia Quintillion. That is a book every property owner needs to have. And January is the month when you have the right to file for an abatement if you do not agree with your property taxes or your valuation. So make sure you check everything on that property record card. Attorney Quintillion's book will teach you how to read your card and how to make changes, hopefully, with your local assessors, if you can do it at that level, and if not, how you need to move it forward in the abatement process. And her guidance is superb. You really can't do anything without some guidance. It's a very complicated field, and there's a lot of people out there who are being taken advantage on their property tax bill and don't even know it. So make sure to get a copy of that book, Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. And also, audiobooks. The Andreasen Affair has an audiobook now, so you can get that and listen to the entire story. And Paul Blake Smith has a book coming out in audio form on the 25th, President Eisenhower's Close Encounters. So if you prefer an audiobook, there's your chance to hear two great UFO stories, very well documented. So tonight, I am so honored to have Derrel Sims, the alien hunter, with us. Now, Derrel's someone who has so much experience, so much knowledge about this entire arena. He's the guy you should listen to. And if you've ever had alien contact, missing time, strange, unexplained marks on your body, you want to talk to Derrel about it. He is the man to meet. And he has personal and professional experience with the alien abduction phenomena and so much more. So he's the world's leading expert on alien abductions with more than 38 years of field research. And he's focused on physical evidence, and that has led to groundbreaking discoveries of alien implants and alien fluorescence. Derrel is a former military police officer and CIA operative. He has unique insight to the alien organization, which he believes functions similarly to an intelligence agency. And we are so honored to have him here tonight. Derrel, welcome to the show.
Well, I'm delighted to be here, Patricia.
It's great to have you on. And I know there's been a lot going on in this field, and as usual, you're right on top of it. But for those of us in the audience, those people in the audience who don't know about your background, if you could give them an update on how you got into this. You had your own experience as a child. And if you could tell us about that, let's start there, and then we'll go into what's happening today with everybody else.
Certainly. I got into the UFO aspect. It actually interfered in my life when I was 4 years old. When I suddenly woke up one night, and woke up was about the proper word. Switched on is a better term. When I noticed something was wrong in my room, and I opened my eyes, and there was this little diminutive guy, about not much bigger than I was. I was only 4. He was a little bigger than me, but he was heading out the wall, fixing to walk. I thought he was going to bump into the wall, and I thought to myself, I didn't realize he had just brought me back, put me in bed, and now he was leaving. My abduction was over. In other words, I just got switched on at the wrong time. And anyway, I said to myself, he's going to bump into the wall. And he turned around rapidly, and I heard this voice in my head, which I've never heard voices in my head that were other than my own. And this one was different, and it said, "It's awake." And I realized,
meaning you,
I'm hearing him think in his own head, and he's talking about me. I'm the only it in the room. So at that point, I was rather stunned. And the reason this is kind of important to say is because some of your people that have had contact in the past will be more than interested to realize that some of these things I'm going to tell you are things that you can question and look at yourself in your own events and others' events. But anyway, at that point, he turned around and looked at me, and I was rather stunned when I looked at him because it's wintertime, and I realized he hasn't got any clothes on. And it was just insane to me because it was really cold in our little place there in Midland, Texas. And as I sat up and I was looking at him, when he turned around, I noticed his huge black eyes that were perfectly round, not like the elliptical kind you see in the movies and so on. And people sometimes ask, why did they have round eyes? And I said, well, it was a different model. I said, if you don't understand that, you're not going to understand a lot about the UFO phenomena.
Right.
You're going to be guessing like a lot of other folks out there. I said, that particular model had round eyes. Anyway, I said, I noticed as I looked from his face that he had virtually no nose. It was so small you couldn't notice it. Little tiny holes there and a little tiny slit for a mouth. And he didn't have any mammary glands. He didn't have a belly button, and he didn't have a TT. That's the way little kids look at things. And
right.
And I'm just startled at this whole thing, why he would be unclothed in my room and walking toward a wall, all that. And later, when I began to study this phenomenon and get into it pretty well, I realized if you don't have genitalia, you don't procreate. And if you don't have a navel or a belly button, you don't. You weren't born. Your hat's cloned or manufactured, so to speak. And that told me a lot about maybe where they're coming from and who they really are, other than the narratives that they would like for us to buy into. So that was my first event there, and I had about 10 events over the next 13 years, which most of them happened from Midland, Texas to Alamogordo, New Mexico, out near White Sands and Holloman Air Force Base, where I lived in that area. And my events ended violently at age 17, and I thought, wonderful, maybe it's all over. But the problem is I came back for my son when he was 6 years old, and that changed my position from a concerned father to an alien hunter. I mean, at that point, I wanted to know who was taking my son and why, and I wanted all the big questions at that point.
Yes, I'm sure you wanted to stop it also. You didn't want him to go through that, did you?
I was very interested in that as well, yes.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. It's so many people have reported on this and said, this happened to me. So many people. And here we have our government just only coming to the point of saying, yes, we have lights in our sky we can't explain. There's ships. We don't know who's piloting them. How ridiculous. When they must know what's going on, right?
Well, it seems there's a generic statement that people make when I talk to them in conferences and things. They'll say the government knows everything or the government doesn't know anything. And I said, well, first of all, let me explain some things about the government since I was in it to some degree at one time. I said the government doesn't have a clue. That's an important thing to know. I said, now the question is, are there some people in the intelligence community, naval intelligence and people like that, do they know? And the answer is yes.
Okay.
But if you walk up to the front door of the CIA, which is actually a police box basically, a guard shack, and tell them you want to know all about flying saucers and UFOs and things like that, they'll have you turn your car around and leave immediately. They don't know what you're talking about, and they think you're nuts.
Really?
So everybody that works at the CIA doesn't know anything. He's just a security guard there. He's with a high clearance. That's all. They don't have a clue what's going on. This information is so well compartmentalized that even if you knew some aspect of it, you wouldn't know other aspects of it. This keeps the information from ever being exploited or stolen by spies and this sort of thing, so that you minimize your exposure. But the government overall, it's like the people always thinking, well, if the Congress needs to tell us everything. Congress doesn't know a whole lot about anything. They spend most of their time trying to get reelected.
And then spend our tax dollars.
They're into control. They're control of politics.
That's obvious, especially now.
Yes. The intelligence folks are the ones who have the information that you might be interested in and this sort of thing.
Now, I was told a long time ago that the Navy was the one that took a primary position in this.
They really are. The naval operations, it's a big player here. A lot of people don't know that. CIA is, of course. I was involved in the CIA for 2 years. But even when I was in there during the Vietnam War, I was in the spy operation, and that ended the spy camp and all that. But with the UFO phenomena, it was never discussed per se, because the spying is what our business was. I mean, it wasn't UFOs; it was spying on the Russians and Chinese and all these other things. Them on us, and us doing something about it. So, like I said, to find someone in the government that actually does know, and I hear people at conferences say, "Well, I know all this, and I've had clearances higher than you can imagine, and so on, and I'm going to tell you everything." No, you're not. You're actually lying through your teeth. And if that were true, you would be in prison somewhere and looking out a little keyhole, wondering why I'm in here. I said, I don't have much faith in people who know it all, and I've got secret people on the inside telling me every little detail. You don't, as a matter of fact. And I can give you a pretty big clue on that. You'll end up in Fort Leavenworth is a military prison. You won't even end up there. You'll end up in a place we refer to as rendition. Rendition is a prison out of country that nobody knows anything about, and that's where you'll be.
Whoa, that sounds like that's the end.
People say stuff like, I don't pay attention to them. I just don't believe them.
But you have your own experience, and you've spoken with so many people around the world that have had these abductions take place. And also you mentioned something that's very important. This is intergenerational. So they came for you, and then they came for your son. So why is that? Why is this an intergenerational phenomenon? Why do they do this from parent to child in certain families?
That is an excellent question, Patricia. some people think they're just lazy, and they have to get people in your family because they want to travel or something. Well, if they got here, they probably can handle it a little better than that. But it's a good question, and it's something we looked into back in the 1980s when we were putting our statistics together, and we noticed that 45% of the people taken that we surveyed in our small survey, 45% were Native American, Indian, Irish, and Celtic. And there are other things too, Basque of northern Spain and so on. But generally speaking, the 45% of the people taken were Native American, Indian, Irish, and Celtic, and Scottish. And we're like, that's a huge slice of people in a very small slice of humanity. And of course, that means there are 55% of the people are other than that. But my point is that out of those statistics as well, you're going to get about 65 to 70% of the abductees taken will be women. 35% will be men or children, but male or female. And those it'll break down like that. And there's just a lot of things we learned through our statistics that, in fact, I was a dear friend of mine who's a real good UFO investigator, did some statistics, and they said, well, and they had never seen ours, and no one ever asked, and they said, well, we did the study, and I said, well, it sounds great, and they said, well, and they started telling me some of the stuff they'd found. I said, well, that sounds good. I said, are you familiar with that? I said, yes, I am. And I said, okay, and they were asking, well, how'd you like the study? And I said, well, I thought you missed a few things. And they said, missed what? I said, the things you don't know about. That. The thing you ask about that you don't know, that. And I said, for instance, I said, and I mentioned the 45% of people taking Native American, Irish, and so on and so on. And then I said, an interesting percentage of these people, they have, some of them have unusual side effects from their events. And I said, for instance, like obsessive compulsive disorder and things like this. And some of these things these mental conditions are side effects from abductions. And he said, well, we didn't find that. And I said, well, okay. And I said, you also missed the lack of sodium content in the abductee's life. And that's why a lot of them desire salt. They'll eat pretzels and salt products, all salsa and things like that. And they don't even realize that you're addicted almost to salt and you don't even know it. And I said a lot of them have electrolyte imbalances from their abductions. And she said, what? And so I gave her a bunch of other stats, and I said, I appreciate your study. I said, for me, I said, this is where I'm at. This is what we've been doing since the 1980s. So that's just a few things alone.
Yeah, so people are having physiological effects that go on for a lifetime after they've had these experiences. The electrolyte imbalance, which can create a lot of trouble, and this desire for salt. I mean, that's, again, something that could cause some trouble. But I wonder why that is. Is that because they've been taken up into space and they've had a reaction from that? Or is that a reaction or response to what the ETs did to them?
I think both probably is a possible condition of that. There's three things. One is the side effects from being out there, and the second condition, which I think you hit on very well, is things that happen to you that maybe have effects on you physiologically. Like one person asked me recently, you may know them, said that they had a growth pattern that was really unusual, and said, did you know anything about it? And I said, yes, I do. I said, one of our abductees, my senior investigator, who's a genius and an engineer, he grew 11 and a quarter inches in 9 months.
God, that's
Can you
a
imagine
lot.
buying clothes for this kid?
No.
Hey, kid,
my goodness. It's like every minute keep buying clothes and another size up.
Oh,
that's a lot. Yeah.
To do all of that in 11 months, that's just incredible.
Yeah. That is incredible. And I've also heard of some people, I heard about an abductee who came back, a young man, and he had an ability to play any instrument beautifully and also to paint, but he really resented those gifts. He didn't see it as something that was going to be enriching his life. He really resented it. Do you find that happens sometimes?
We do, and there's two ways to think of this. One is, did you like it, or did it bless you, or did it curse you, so to speak? And I understand his viewpoint. I have a questionnaire that I give to abductees, which is it's entitled 6 Reasons Why They Take You. Mm-hmm. And then I list these 6 reasons out, and then I give illustrations in each one of the 6 reasons of the side effects from these things that happen to you, which can be physiological or psychological, but also the fact that there are programs that are running within us. And some people say, well, since I was in a UFO, I have an implant. That's just not true. I said, most people do not have implants that have had UFO events. I said, I discovered the phenomenon in 1960. I probably have a clue after conducting 27 surgical interventions around the world. I probably know a little bit more than a couple of people do. So I said the fact is that if you have seen an alien, been close to an alien, been close to UFO or anything like that, you're probably already programmed. Forget the implant; that's irrelevant at this point. Programs are things, they're little. You like in a computer, you have you download an app, so to speak. Well, these are like little apps that the alien downloads in you without your permission, and that's why the guy was upset. Well, this is a gift. No, it's not a gift from the aliens. You're an experiment, and you're playing their songs, so to speak. You're doing what they want. It has enough. You don't get the choice. And if they, like one abductee told me, she said, Derrel, I hate the alien too. I said, I don't hate anybody. I said, I don't know where you get that. I said, I don't like a lot of stuff they're doing to people without their permission, especially abducting them, which is taking them with kidnapping is what it is. And I said, I'm an ex-police officer, and kidnapping is still a crime. I don't care what planet you're from. It's not a good deal. You want me to go out and start kidnapping aliens? No, that would be wrong. Then why is it good for them to do it, but it's wrong for me to do it? I said, you're being weird here. You're not making sense. But these little programs, these apps, so to speak, you're like a Bluetooth operation, like your computer or your cell phone, and these are little programs that run inside you. And one of them, okay, I'll give you an example. And I didn't tell the people this, but most conferences I go to, I'll ask a series of questions before I get started. Question number 1, how many of you have ever seen a UFO? And all kinds of hands will go up. How many of you have ever seen a UFO up close and personal? And less hands go up. How many of you people are actually experiencing contact or abduction? Less hands go up. How many of you people think you have an implant? Few hands will go up. And I said, would you send me an x-ray of the affected area where you think this implant is at? Would you raise your hand now? And almost no hands will go up. That's the program. The program is you're supposed to ignore or destroy evidence. You have no idea how hard it is to collect UFO evidence. I mean, any kind. Abductees, they'll call me after a contact event, like 2 or 3 weeks or a month or a year later. Mm-hmm. I said, do you realize that it's like the TV show, The First 48? I said, that's true of police work, in our work as well. Within the first 48 hours, when you come back from an actual abduction event, there's evidence on, around, or near you. And if I don't get to you in that first 48 hours, a lot of that evidence is going to be gone, like fluorescence, like the physical touch they touch you with. It's actually traceable. You can actually find that with a black light and so on. And that's going to disappear within a 48-hour period. So you calling me 6 months later doesn't kind of make any sense. But that's a program run into you to ignore your evidence, not to bring it to anybody's attention, and so on and so on. And that's just one of many programs. And another question I'll ask these people, how many of you people have an allergic reaction to procaines, xylocaine, novocaine, lidocaine, carbocaine, cocaine, whatever cane is out there. And don't raise your hand on the cocaine one, and they'll all laugh. And 4 or 5 hands will go up. I said, do you realize there should be about 35,000 people in this audience for that many hands to go up? Every one of you that raise your hands are abductees.
Kidding. And why would that be an allergy to procaine? Okay, so that's
an allergic reaction to procaine. Probably because they've been using too much of the cane on you.
Okay.
And you became allergic to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the last couple of questions I'll ask them are, which, again, all of these, to me, are just telling me how many programs are being run on these people out there in that audience I'm fixing to talk to. And the next question I'll ask them would be, how many of you people absolutely feel, regardless of the fact you've had wonderful parents, raised you, cared for you, loved, nurtured you, you feel like they're not your parents? Now, see, you don't have to raise your hand. I already know the answer to that. And several of them raise their hands anyway. That's a program. And I said, the last question I want to ask you is this. How many of you know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that your parents, even though you know them, you've got a pedigree, you have a birth certificate, the whole 9 yards, but you don't think they're your parents? The alien is. Now, so you don't have to raise your hand. I already know the answer to that, too. These are programs being run on you.
Now, especially with the one where you would over-identify with the alien as your parent rather than your own biological parents, that's very, very interesting to me. And there are a lot of people who have said this. I know as a counselor, I did therapy for so many years. I've heard so many people say this, and I never considered that this was an app running in the background. This was software that was installed.
That's the best way to think of it, an app.
Gosh,
and you
but it
didn't
makes so much
someone
sense.
Else did.
Right, it makes so much sense.
If you've had contact with an alien, in other words, you woke up and it was next to my room, next to my bed, but I never was taken anywhere. You probably weren't. But the app has already been downloaded. Whatever the app was, it's already downloaded.
You got it. So they don't have to take you out of your bedroom at night. They can download it where? From anywhere, or they have to be close proximity to you?
Patricia, 80% of the people taken, and this makes abductees mad when I tell them this, 80% of the time you didn't go anywhere. In other words, they didn't take you. You were still at the edge of bed. They were doing whatever they were doing with you with that app, so to speak. Or if you were riding your bicycle and they confronted you there, that's where the event happened. You may not have been taken on board the ship anywhere. 80% of the time, we're not taken anywhere. But 20% of the time, you're gone. And I mean, if they check your room, you won't be in there. You're gone. And we got many cases of this, even in Israel, where people came into the party and checked on a guy. He said, I'm going to go sleep. I'm just not going to get drunk and do all the crazy stuff tonight. And they left him at like 10 o'clock at night, and they went back up at 2 o'clock in the morning. He wasn't there. They came back at 4, and he was. And they said, where have you been? He said, I never went anywhere. What are you talking about? Well, in his bed, he did experience alien abduction. I've worked with him personally in Israel. And there were 3 plant seeds found in his bed. I have one of them. He kept one of them, and a famous news reporter got the third one. And when he interviewed him, and the seeds are from the Seychelles Islands on the other side of Africa.
Oh my gosh!
What are they doing in his bed? Yeah, that's the kind of evidence I like to see.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I like that. Wow. So, did he have any memory of this, or did you do some regression work with him to pull it
both.
to the?
He had some memory. He had some memory of missing time and so on. And that's the first hint that, again, there's a program. Missing time is a program that's running. And if it runs real well, you don't remember anything. And I'll give you a case in point. An engineer came to me, a friend of mine, a friend of my friend, and she said, Mr. Sims, we're here in Sedona, and I'm listening to your presentation, and it was interesting, but I think all this is the biggest bunch of crap I ever heard. And I said, okay.
Oh, my.
She said, that doesn't bother you? And I said, not at all. She said, why not? And I said, well, if you're an abductee, I can't make you one, and if you're not one, I can't make you one if I wanted you to be one. I said, there's nothing I can do about it, either way.
Right.
She said, well, I fill out your forms, and 35 out of the 35 markers of an abductee, I fit 33 of them.
Oh.
Including the rare drug allergy to procaines.
Oh, my goodness.
And I said, I understand. And I said, your tests have got to be skewed or something. I said, it would seem so to you, I'm sure. 2 years later, she came to me when I was at another conference out in Phoenix. And she said, I don't know how to say it. I said, just say it. So I want you to work with me and see if there's any events there. She said, I just don't believe any of this anyway. And I said, well, I don't care whether you do or not. It doesn't matter to me what events or not. I don't care. I'm not in the business of caring and making people have events or not. I don't give a hoot. It doesn't matter. And I don't try to make anybody anything. And she said, okay. And so I started to work with her, and I made sure she was in memory and so on and so on. And then finally, I popped her into her first event, and she was 5 years old walking inside a UFO craft with the alien holding onto her little arm. And she looked into the right room as they walked down the hallway, and she heard a cow bellowing, and it was being mutilated while it was still alive.
Oh,
that was her
awful.
first experience walking in the craft. She was absolutely stunned, just horrified.
Yeah.
Anyway, for 2 hours we went through this, and she when I brought her out of her trance, she was just crying and crying and crying like a baby. And but this just can't be happening to me. This is impossible. I said, I know. Welcome to the club.
Yeah.
I said, that's just the way it is, and I'm sorry for your. I said, I would prefer that you didn't have any experiences. I get it. I truly do. And she said, but this just can't be happening. And I said, I know. I said, the program run called Missing Time is very effective. I said, some of the programs are so worn out, so to speak, the app is wearing out, that a lot of people now in these days are remembering their missing time or parts of it really well. They remember pieces, but they don't get the whole thing. You didn't remember anything. I said there are three types of these people. One are abductees, which are people like me that didn't like getting taken. I don't like being kidnapped. I don't like that at all. I don't care who you are. Number two are contactees who, in my opinion, are people, they love being taken. They think it was a good idea, and whoever did this to them is probably far higher and better and smarter than we are, then therefore whatever they do is correct. And I said, well, I seem to remember the American Indians having the same viewpoint about the Portuguese whenever they came over to South America. They're bigger, smarter, and they got these strange craft out there in the water, so they must be smarter than all of us. And the last people believed in that and ended up conquered and in the slavery for the rest of their lives, the ones that survived. So I'm not much of an adherent to that viewpoint, but whatever floats your boat. And the third group of people, I said, are people just like you. And she said, what are those? And I said, they don't remember anything at all. And I said, I prefer that you don't remember anything. Personally, I said, if you're happier not remembering, that's fine with me. I'm good with that.
Yeah. So did she eventually pull out all of the memories from these multiple abductions?
I worked with her for hours all that day, and she said, I want to know all of it, and she did, and she was just mortified. It's like somebody, you coming into this professor's home, you sit down and tell him you've got these strange little quirks, and you don't know why they're happening to you, but it's something wrong with your life, and you don't know why, and you're 100% normal, and you're an engineer, you're everything, and he talks to you, works with you a little bit for a few hours, and then you find out that you've got another life that you knew nothing about. It's called the secret life. The life that the alien is is started, and they try to keep it as secret as possible. And even if you do remember parts of it, you usually try to keep it real secret too, because you don't want people belittling or laughing at you or anything else.
Exactly, calling you crazy. Yeah, it's a very hard thing to get support for. Now it's a lot easier than it ever was. But even now, you have to be careful who you talk to about something like that. So good for that lady, because it takes courage to dig that deep and find out what happened. And with your help, she was able to do it.
Yeah, the good thing about it is that she didn't have to tell anybody, because her friends, which I was one, and we found out and knew about it, but we never wanted her to tell her boss or business partners and people like that. I mean, that would be catastrophic to people like that. It's better they don't know you had an experience.
There isn't a big upside to sharing that with anybody. So, yeah. But at least she was able, with your help, to get that out there for herself, at least for her own self.
We have a support group. We got a little support group for people so they can meet people privately and online, and they've all become very good friends and things like that. And that is one of the best things that's ever happened to any of these people, when they meet people who have had like experiences, and even experiences beyond or different than theirs. But they all have the same thing. They've all had contact in one form or another, abductees or contactees, or like this lady, in between. And that's okay. One of the first support groups we ran publicly out of the Houston UFO Network back in the early 90s. It was really funny.
Yes.
A lady, we're all sitting there, and me and a couple of the directors, and we're all sitting there, and this lady came in late. She was about 20 minutes late, and she looked at everybody and stood there and started crying. And I said, what's the reason for your tears? And she said, you all know each other, and I don't know anyone. You all know each other for years. And I said, lady, there isn't anybody in this room except me and Dale that know each other. All these people are brand new to us, too. I said, but in about 15 minutes, she felt like she was family.
Isn't that great?
It's a wonderful experience. So people, they realize that they're people like you, and they're not crazy, and they're good, and a lot of them end up being lifelong buddies of yours from then on. You can tell them anything you want. That's
very healing for people.
It is.
There was a television show a few years back called People of Earth, and it was about a support group for abductees, and it was excellent. It was a great show. Of course, the powers that be took it off the air after 1 or 2 seasons, but it was wonderful because it basically detailed how these people became friends, and then, who were the people that couldn't be trusted and that could. It was great.
Sure.
So, unfortunately, another one bit the dust there, but it did talk quite profoundly about the abduction experience and how these people, benefited from a friendship like that.
Well, some of the reasons some of these shows don't last too long is because they're kind of repetitive. It's like next show, it's the same thing. It's the same sentence.
Yeah, some of them are, but I'll tell you, this one was unique. It was very different and very well written. I think it was too close to the truth. That's why it didn't last.
Like I want to do a support group specifically at a university setting where when they get the money and everything to do this, I want to fly abductees in who were implantees, who had implants at one time, and some of them still do. And I want to fly them in and have the testing done while they're there. And I want the abductees and the contactees and all these people who had implants or do have implants still to meet each other and to interact on that level. And the fascinating thing is I really want to I want to do some interactive work with abductees on that level on a college university setting. That would be historic, I believe. I really do.
It would be very interesting. Yeah, it really would be. Now, you talk about the implants. Tell us more about this whole phenomenon of implants. How do you find them? How do you know if you have them? And then what do you do?
Well, generally speaking, on my email, people go to our site on alienhunter.org or .com, and they'll just click on it, and they'll generally hit my email and say, "I've got an alien implant. You need to remove it right away." Like, okay, thank you for the call.
All right.
First of all, what convinces you have an alien implant? Well, I must be chipped because I was on the ship. Well, that doesn't mean anything. You weren't chipped because you were on a ship. It doesn't work like that. And second is, I said, what medical evidence do you have to support your claim? Do you have MRIs, CAT scans, or any X-rays or any medical evidence to support your claim? Usually it's no. Well, then let me give you a shout-out here. No doctor is going to cut on you, do anything to you, or help you in any way, shape, or form if you, number one, don't have any medical evidence or X-rays of anything wrong with you that you need something removed. Number two, if you mention the word alien and alien implants, they're probably not going to have anything to do with you anyway, even if you do have them. I said, so you're making some huge mistakes by approaching it the wrong direction. I said, third is you have to convince me that it is, in fact, an alien implant. I said, we've done surgeries on people and removed pencil lead and BBs and things like that from them that actually swore those were alien implants. If you get stuck by pencil lead in school when you're 6 years old, that pencil lead will still be there 20 years later. That's graphite, and you may have forgotten it, and then you think you have an abduction experience. You think, oh, my God, the X-ray, look at this thing. It's an alien implant. And it's actually graphite. It's a pencil lead, I'm sorry.
Right.
There are a lot of these things that are quite natural forming and so on. But a real alien implant, and my own, how I learned about it was when I was 12 years old. I went through an alien implant experience, and I was wide awake when the event happened. And basically, they drove a needle-like device, approximately 8 inches long, into my nasal passage, and it went past my eye, and it broke the bones in my nose, and it hurt, excruciating. I was screaming, and then it left a little silver sphere back behind my eye, and they pulled the needle out, and of course there was blood on it. And the next morning when they brought me back, put me in my room, and there was blood on my pillow, and my mother says, "You've been picking your nose again?" And I immediately said, yes, because I didn't want her to know anything. And that's why I didn't tell her. Again, this is a program that's running in you. You hide, destroy, or will negate evidence in any way, shape, or form. And I did that. And most abductees do. Almost every one of them I talked to, I asked them, they said, I removed an implant, what I did with a pocket knife, when I was younger and all that. And they said, do you have the implant? No. 99.99999% of them have no object. Where did it go? I don't know. I threw it away. One guy, I threw it in the commode and then flushed it. And he said, yeah. And he said, then I jumped to realize I made a mistake. I jumped in the commode with both hands and tried to find it, and I couldn't get it. But you hear these stories all the time. But destroying evidence or hiding evidence or not talking about it, these are programs that are running inside us. They're just alien apps, so to speak, that run to that's
it covers their tracks.
Think about it. It does.
Yeah, it covers their tracks completely. What about this mind wipe that they do? Yeah, what about the mind wipe that they do? Because there's a lot of abductees, as you mentioned, who don't remember anything. So the mind wipe must have really worked on them.
Well, you can, if you wanted to, you can call it anything you want. The missing time phenomena is a good illustration of that process. A long time ago, when I was 4 years old in 1952, he put that large black eye right next to my eye and said, "You won't remember." And I kept thinking to myself, yes, I will. And I did. But for a lot of people, that program works perfectly, or it works 99% of the time. or it works. They have another program they work, which is called a screen memory. And a screen memory is you have the abduction or contact event, and you wake up in the morning. One of the things he tried to do whenever he realized he couldn't control me, the next thing he did was try to change the image of himself into that of a clown. Some people say, well, that was shape-shifting. I said, no, it wasn't. Shape-shifting means you actually changed into something else. He didn't. He was messing with my consciousness.
Right.
And I said, I ended up with a phobia of a clown. So instead of the abduction event, guess what I remembered? The phobia of the clown. But I knew that that he was the clown, that he was using that image to make me believe that I had a terrible dream. And I never told my parents. I woke up and they realized that morning that I was quite distressed, and they thought it, of course, was a bad dream, and I didn't have a bad dream. I had a bad experience. And
exactly.
But that program was running in me. The other program was the screen image, that it was in fact and I meet abductees like this all the time. Little girls that were at a Bible camp, like a girls' camp, camping out, and they said, this big wolf came inside the door. I said, well, how'd he get inside the screen door? That's a good question. He came inside the screen door, and he got right next to my face with a large black eye. Yes. How'd you know that? Well, just lucky guess. And he took me and these two other girls, and we don't know where we went or what happened, but we remember the big wolf. Well, as soon as you work with them, immediately they find out, oh, my God, it's not a wolf. No, that's the screen image. That's a program that's running in your brain to keep you from not remembering or not remembering specific information. It's just a program. It's an app.
Just a program, exactly. Now, I've heard a lot about people being told to remember that it wasn't an alien, it was an owl.
Yes, that's the program. Lady, case in point, in California, a very dear friend of mine, known for 20 years. She said, I said, have you had any of this lately? She said, yeah. I said, it's really weird. She said, I heard a knock on my door, and I went down and opened the door. I said, what time was it? She said, 3 o'clock in the morning. I said, that's the witching hour for the alien. And she laughed and said, I said, what happened? She said, it was my dad. I said, okay. Your dad's been dead for a long time, hadn't he? She says, yes. That's the screen image.
Right. What they want you to see. They
use the image of her daddy. I said, what did you do? She said, I went with him. I said, well, sweetie, I know your home real well. You live upstairs. Somebody knocking on the door is not going to wake you up upstairs. But it only woke you up in the entire house of people. Why do you think that is? They're just knocking on your auditory circuit.
Yeah, exactly.
And your dad, was there anything interesting about your dad? She says, yeah, he was kind of a pale green. She said, I couldn't understand that at all. I laughed. I said, okay.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's a program.
Oh,
it's just an app.
Yeah. And people can just go along with it. They just believe it. And, there was a movie about the events in Alaska. Because I know Alaska's had a lot of abductions, right?
Sure.
And these were horrific, though. I don't know if you saw the movie, and I can't remember the name, but, these were described in the film as quite horrific. It involved a psychotherapist who was seeing these patients, and these patients were getting severe injuries from these interactions with the aliens. And, it was horrifying. Everything that went on it seemed like the worst of the worst, almost as bad as the abductions that have happened at times in South America. But the owl was used over and over again because people kept saying, well, I saw this owl. So,
sure.
But do you know anything about what's going on in Alaska and what did go on in Alaska with this type of thing? Well, do tell. We want to know.
A TV program contacted me here a while back, and they said the producer was talking to me, and I got talking to him, and he said, "You know anything about alien implants?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I discovered them, so I kind of know a lot about it." "Oh my gosh! Well, you need to talk to my head guy. You know, he needs to talk to you." And I said, "Okay." So I talked to him a couple of times, and he says, "Well, this guy's got an implant in his leg, and he lives out in the bush and all that." And I said, "Okay." I said, "You know anything about implants in the leg?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I've got an implant currently in with the family." Their dad had told him he was not in Alaska. This is another case. I said, in this case, the dad died, but before he died, he told his kids that he had an implant in his leg, alien implant in his calf. And when he died, they called their friend, the undertaker, and said, "Would you look inside his leg, in his calf, and see if you can find if there's an implant?" And they did. They sent it to me. I said, "So I have an implant from someone's leg, a deceased person, on me now that I've actually studied." And I said, "So I think I'm familiar with that." "Yes." "Well, we need to get you right up here." And I said, "That would be wise, in my opinion." But they never did. They just went ahead and did the show, and the show, in my opinion, was kind of brand X. It was so nonchalant. I was just horrified that they just turned it into a TV program. You know, it just that was sad. I really hate to see that. But there are a lot of events like that, and some of them are real horrific, especially some with the natives. And it's just whatever screen memory you're given. It can be the Michelin Tire Man. It can be Casper, the friendly ghost. But all of them had large black eyes. That's the important thing.
Right.
You need noticed by a wolf, a deer, an elk came up to me and talked to me. You know, elks normally don't do that. They just don't talk much to people.
Yeah,
but these are screened images. These are programs that are being run on people, and they can be a deceased relative. They're just using your consciousness to buy into the imagery, and it's easier to do that than to deal with the other half of the scenario, that it wasn't a wolf at all. That it was. In fact, you should see people like whenever you're working with them in hypnosis, and they're in the event, and there's this wolf coming into the door, and all of a sudden, when I start working with them, they look very carefully at it and realize, oh my God, it's not a wolf. And they figure out they've been played. They've been played big time. So some people, that for your consciousness' sake, Casper the Friendly Ghost works better than the other guy.
Yeah, exactly. Now, these implants, I know you've really done a lot of research on them, all different kinds. And what's your take on what these implants are for? What are these implants doing?
Well, it depends on where they are, where they're located, and what particular program they're using on you at the time. So, for instance, I have one of my abductees is a police officer up in Dallas, Texas, and he called me one day. This was this year, and he said, "I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time." And I said, "Well, I'm glad you finally called." Notice he was avoiding me for years. Like I said, they destroy evidence. They make every effort not to do the right thing. That's why I'm glad you finally called. And he said, "Yeah," and he's a real smart guy, very sharp. Works in the medical community. And then he says, "Well, I've got this object that I found in my back, and I just dug it out, and I've got it in a container," and he sent it to me. And I said, "Okay." And we looked at it. And then later he said, "I've found a second one that was in my back," and he sent that to me. And then he called me about a week later, and he said, "We need to talk on the phone privately." And I said, "Okay." And he said, I said, "What happened?" He said, "Derrel," he said, "you realize I'm a police officer in the medical field at the university level, working with a lot of people that have got clearances." And I said, "Yes, I do." And he said, "I noticed a couple of cars approached my house independent of each other, and then they parked about a block away. And then whoever was in the car, two guys got out, walked and met each other, and then walked up to my door. And I came out, and I said, "Who are you?" And he said, "They knew me." And they said, this is recent. They said, "We're here to talk to you about your," he said they were real uncomfortable to use the word alien problem.
Oh.
He said, "What alien problem would that be?" And they said, they said, "We are special agents from the FBI." And he said, "Okay." He said, "Well, I'm a cop, I'm blah, blah, blah." And they all cooled off there. And they said, "You've been having a problem with the alien." And he said, "Well, I have for a fact." And he said, "And I freely admit that, and I don't like it." And he said, "Well, what happened?" He said, "Well," he said, "I found an object in my back." And he said, "What did you do? Where did you have the object on you?" And he said, "No." He said, "I sent it to be studied." And they, hand to God, true story, they looked at him and said, "Oh, you sent it to Derrel Sims in Houston."
What?
He said, he said, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. He said, "Are they watching me?" I said, "Well," I said, "let's back off and look at it a different way." I said, "First of all, you're a police officer that is heavily involved with people that are involved in high-level government secretive projects and things like, not UFOs, but secretive stuff and things you don't want. They don't want people getting the enemies and Chinese and other people like that." He said, "That's true." And I said, "Well," I said, "the mere fact that you're, quote unquote, having alien problems right now is a good reason to investigate you. I mean, you are in a sensitive area, right? So who's the alien for sure?" And they were convinced that you were having real alien contact at that point, and that fascinated them because you're not crazy, you're not weird, you're not one of those weird people. You're for real cop, hardcore cop. It's a 30-year cop. You know, that's big stuff. And I said, the fact is they know me and they know what I do. I said, the easiest way to think about this is they're not interested in me. They're interested in people that call me.
Mm-hmm. They are.
And if you happen to be, let's say you're in the intelligence community, like in Office of Naval Investigations, and you need help as an abductee, and you call me, do you think they're going to notice? They will.
Of course.
And they're going to be watching you for at least 10 years. You'll be on a watch list.
Wow. Is it that long, 10 years, just for this?
Yeah, they want to make sure that you're not being, because I'm red, white, and blue. I mean, I've had top secret clearance and the whole 9 yards. I'm as red, white, and blue as they get. If I got cut, I'd probably bleed red, white, and blue. But the point is that I'm loyal to the hilt, and people I know are too. But they're worried about someone getting compromised, even by the alien, at some level.
Huh. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So, but what do these implants do to people? Are they running the software program? Because I know you mentioned before, it's not really a tracking device. It's something else.
It isn't. That's very, very, very true. It's not. The late Stanton Friedman, we were together in a conference, and people were asking questions about implants, and to him, and he said, "You're asking the wrong guy." I said, "I don't know anything about that." He said, "I guess they're tracking devices. I don't know what they are. Ask Derrel." Mm-hmm. And I said, "Well, with respect, Stanton," I said, "these are not tracking devices." I said, "First of all, how did they find you to begin with?"
Yeah, before you had the device.
They put it in you 5 years ago or 20 years ago or a year ago or whatever, wherever you all before then. I said, they know where you're at because of, in my opinion, because of your genetic profile that they have records of. And I said, so that's part of your lineage, and that will be exploited. Not everyone in your family will be taken, but some will. Mm-hmm. And I said, anyway, I said, these devices, I said, they're different. Some are metal, they're made out of different things. Some are made out of a plastic-like material. 4 of which were retrieved surgically from an abductee that was camping with a friend of his at Area 51, of all places.
Oh, my.
Yeah, I've got 3 of them. So the question, I'm not trying to be elusive here. I'm trying to be definitive to let people realize that one size doesn't fit all. And when people
so
say,
they do different things.
That doesn't mean anything. What is it? What does it do? Where was it located? Well, it was located, like we had one in the mass abduction of 8 people. They implanted a lady and put the device, the shell of it, looked like a little tiny eggshell with the end of it cut out. We think it housed a biological camera. I have the shell of it now because it fell out of her eye. They got the biological implant out, but they forgot the shell, and I got it. So what is that? What is that opposed to an object in your hand? Is an example. Well, there are clearly 2 different functioning devices. This one was used to spy on people for 3 days. We know that. We have reasonable information that was a device that literally was used for spying. It was a biological camera, so to speak. It was spying specifically on me and what these people were doing for 3 days. So that's just the truth of it.
And that's just one implant, and so that was in her eye. That's awful. Yeah,
that's correct.
So
now, depending on where it's located, that's a huge statement. It was located in your eye or your. We got one lady that's got one the size of a walnut located near her heart.
Oh, that sounds dangerous.
And we don't know what that one is, and we'll certainly never remove it because we're not going to do anything that's going to cause anybody or anything like that. It's too dangerous to remove in that case. But what it's doing there, I have no idea. I would just I have to guess, but because I don't know. And the thing is, it's big. It's the size of a walnut. This thing is huge.
Gosh, what could it be doing?
What it is either. He's a military doctor, and he's freaking out. He doesn't have a clue what that thing is.
Yeah.
But he believes the story of alien contact. He believes that they did it.
Well, that's interesting because I was going to ask you, there are some abductees that talk about incisions that were made like across their chest, kind of above heart level. And I was wondering, what the world would they do that for? Because, you hear about, for women, eggs being retrieved or fetuses being retrieved, things like that. But what are they doing in that area above the heart? Why would they be making incisions there?
Well, that's the $64,000 question. And as I mentioned early in this presentation, in this discussion, the alien functions like an intelligence community. I think you read that. And
I did.
what that means
is
they function like an intelligence community. When I went into the CIA and remembering all of my abduction events and everything, I was really stunned when I started studying the tradecraft of a spy. And the tradecraft is his skill. It's his skill level. Things that he does is a knock or non-official capacity. In other words, we're going to disallow this. We're not going to. You get caught. We're not going to identify ourselves as knowing. We'll never. We're not going to admit anything about you. So that's what a knock is, or a spy. And they're really called. Everybody says that you're a CIA agent. That is the most. People that say things like that don't have a clue what they're even talking about. The CIA agent is not a person who is in the CIA. Period.
Oh, okay.
A CIA agent, an agent is either witting or unwitting. They are not in the CIA. They're used by the CIA.
Oh, that's a big difference.
A CIA case officer is that guy would be a spy.
Okay.
And he's called a case officer. And when you call him a CIA agent, he looks at you like you're an idiot. Because he realizes you don't have a clue about any of this.
Yeah.
The tradecraft, none of it. And
Wow.
it's like going to a doctor, an OBGYN, and ask her, well, my toenail hurts. You need to fix that. She's going to look at you like you're a dunce. Don't you know what the word OBGYN means? And it shows how limited you are in your understanding about the intelligence community. You don't have a clue. You're acting like you know, but you don't. And so anyway, a little piece of information for those who want to know about the tradecraft.
And what about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, the second thing is that they function like an intelligence community. They lie, and they lie consistently. That's what we did in the intelligence community. We're not going to tell you our big secrets, everything we know about where all the Russian nukes are at. We're not going to tell you that stuff. We'll lie about it. Say we don't know any of it. We know what you're talking about. And but the alien functions the same way. They lie consistently. No, the aliens love me. They treat me really good, and they tell me all kinds of great stuff. They tell me the planet they came from, Zeta Reticuli. You really believe that stuff? You really think they live on a planet? Well, they have to. Told you that. If they're a craft, I've got film footage of craft that are 50 miles thick, 600 miles across. If you have a craft that big, what would you need a planet for? They don't run around farming and doing the things that you do. They're not anything like you. They don't think like you. They don't function like you, and they like you so much that they don't ever tell you the truth. How big a relationship is that?
Yeah, really. Exactly. What kind of friend is that? It isn't a friend. And I think this is what I think concerns me also, is that I hear a lot of people speaking in loving terms about what they consider to be their own connection with certain aliens, whether it's Pleiadians or whatever. And they all say, they have a non-interference, the big deal. We don't interfere. It's like such
crap. That came right out of Star Trek.
Yeah,
that term was never ever used until Star Trek used it.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, we did
stuff.
hear it on Star Trek. Even Star Trek interfered. But to think that they're not interfering is nonsense. They have all been interfering in their own way. And this supposed thing, this pact that they have, that they won't interfere, I'm sorry, I don't buy it, because I'm looking at what you're looking at. All these people who have had these abduction experiences seemingly without their permission, and
that's kind of interference.
It's interference.
Kidnapping is generally interference. If you're going out with your husband or something to a movie and then you end up with missing time, you're still sitting in the car and he got taken for 3 hours. That's an interference. I think they interfered with your dinner date that night. I
think so. And who knows what else? I mean, again, this is all question. As you mentioned, it's like, why are they cutting? When I asked, why are they cutting into people's bodies at the heart, above heart levels? Like, what are they doing? We don't know.
Well, they're never going to tell you. The issue is that if they tell you anything, they'll 99% of the time lie about it. We're repairing your heart. You had an injury there. Oh, they saved me. Listen. I had a neurosurgeon of all things call me one day, said, Mr. Sims, and she started asking questions. And I said, ma'am, why don't you just go ahead and ask me what you called me for? It's okay. She said, okay. She said, have you ever found abductees that had injuries that were covered up? I said, yes, ma'am, I have. She said, some of your abductees are my patients. I said, yes, ma'am.
Oh, my.
She said, I have found injuries in them that have been covered up, but in other words, they have like a car wreck, is an example, and I'm checking them neurologically for whatever reason for the car wreck, and she said, and I find out there are other injuries that were before the car wreck that it looks like it's a cover-up. And I said, you are wiser than your years, young lady.
No kidding.
I said, I've got kids with broken arms, broken bones. I said, I myself went to the VA hospital, and my primary care physician and a radiologist were screaming at each other over the phone, talking about my broken ribs. I told my primary care position. I didn't have broken ribs. And the radiologist was screaming at him, said, "Don't you tell me, $250,000 a year, don't tell me I can't read an X-ray." And he was screaming at him. And he looked, Hank flown up and laughed and everything, said, "I guess you got 4 broken ribs up there, buddy." And I laughed, and I said, of course, I knew I had broken ribs, but I have no history of it. Where did you get your broken ribs? In my last abduction event. But it was covered up, so I wouldn't know it.
So this neurosurgeon figured that out.
They healed you. I said, no, they didn't heal me. They covered it up. I wrote a paper about it. It's called Them Bones, and it was based on the neurologist in my study.
Wow.
It's just another program.
Yeah, it is. This makes so much sense, Derrel. I'm so glad you're talking to us tonight about this. Now, I'm sure you're familiar with David Paulides' work, Missing 411.
Sure, I know him very well.
Yes, okay. Sure. So you know that some of the people, they end up with head injuries, and they find them weeks later, even though they've already searched the area. Then they find the body, and there are these head injuries. Now, I interviewed Carl Higdon, Marjorie Higdon. That's the Wyoming hunter that was abducted, and this was back in 1974. Now, when they returned him, and they kind of liked him, they were kind of friendly to him, and they had some friendly exchanges, but they dropped him out of the bottom of the ship. So he landed, and luckily he was a big, strong guy, kind of like you, big, strong, manly man kind of guy, and so he landed on the side of this hill, but he lost his footing and really tore up his shoulder, and he fell. But then it made me think about all these other people David has talked about that ended up with these head injuries. I'm thinking, well, yeah, probably they were dumped out of the bottom of a spaceship, and they didn't land like Carl did, and stay alive. They landed on their heads. So I think that's entirely possible, and it's really sad that they have treated people, if that's in fact what they've done, so horribly. Once they're done with them, they're just dumped.
Well, we have several cases where one of the questions on our questionnaire, extensive questionnaire, is have you ever felt like you were dropped on your bed, especially if you had a water bed? In other words, it's still shaking and it wakes you up. And we have some cases where they dropped from the ceiling and landed on the bed in the wrong place, and it injured them, and they ended up in an emergency room.
Yeah, so they don't seem to care.
That'll ruin your evening.
It certainly would. Yeah,
really
right.
did.
Oh, you don't interfere. Yeah, right. Exactly. Do you think that this all started around the time of Eisenhower with all these abductions, and that our government, that Eisenhower was involved in letting them do that with a secret treaty? Do you think that's possible?
No, the reason I don't think that is my abduction started in 1952. And we have abduction stories going back as far as in the 1800s.
Okay.
We have
the history is much longer.
We have mutilations of cows and even humans. Tons of meat falling out of the sky in the 1800s.
Wow.
And it was sliced.
Ugh.
The human part. The humans were. Lungs, heart, etc.
Oh, gosh, how awful. Now, I've heard that the South American abductions tend to be more brutal. Is that true?
Generally speaking, they have been in the island of Calades. There was a wonderful book written by, what was his name? It's called UFO Danger Zone. You can Google it and you can get it. And the guy was a really good journalist, and he wrote this story very well. And in those cases, it's called UFO Danger Zone, and it in fact that's an accurate statement. Those cases, many of them were injured by laser-like devices that were shot at from the UFO, and some of them actually died from their events. But it's very famous cases. There were a number of, I've been to Brazil two different times, in the middle of Brazil, Brasilia, and in Curitiba. and studied the Varginha incident and other cases down there. The stories out of countries like distant countries like that in the bush tend to be more violent because the alien can get away with it. Here, it's harder to do. I've got cases of mutilation that are beyond horrific out of Brazil. One lady said to me, "Well, they're doing scientific experiments on this." I said, "Young lady, when you're an elderly woman skinned alive in your own bed and there's no blood."
Ugh. Whoa.
I don't think. What kind of science is that, in your opinion? Well, she's on the phone up. And I could give. One guy had his eyes surgically removed in the middle of this little village, and the little kids going to school found him. They recognized his voice when he was crying, and his eyes had been surgically removed. And
oh my God!
I said, "This is the middle of nowhere where there aren't any hospitals and stuff." I said, "Give me a break. What kind of science do you think needs to be doing that?"
Yeah, exactly. That's awful. I mean, it sounds like just again a horrible lab experiment. I know we've been guilty of that, doing this to animals, but certainly I've heard these horrible stories about Brazil and other places in South America where it just seems like, and maybe that's the reason, like you just said, they can get away with it there, especially in the rural areas. There's no medical care. These things just happen.
Who are you going to go tell? Ghostbusters?
Right. And there's also what's very important is there's no media. There's no television. There's nothing where people would get this kind of information and then try to make up stories. It's not happening that way. It's just a real occurrence, and how awful for these people who have the misfortune to be taken and then returned in a horrible condition.
Horrific cases like that. Some of them around the world as well. But the idea that things are lightening up and it's not happening, these people are not well read, and they're certainly not following the data. Data is there. It's and the people are having positive experiences and they're having horrific experiences. But again, it depends on the program being run on you. If you I'll give you one last case in point before we'll have to finish here for long. Case in point.
Mm-hmm.
Lady came to me and said, I think your support group is completely insane. I said, okay. That don't bother you? No. Why not? That's because that's just your opinion. And like eyeballs, everybody's got one, a couple of them usually, and that don't mean a whole lot. Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of people are abductees, and they're saying bad things about the alien, and I think they're all good. And I said, well, that's, again, an opinion, and that's fine. Nobody cares what your opinion is. Yeah. And she said, well, I want you to work with me, and I want you to see for the first time in your life that there are positive experiences. I said, I've got people with positive experiences. I said, a lot of them, by and large, don't turn out to be nearly as positive as they thought they were. Anyway, I worked with her, and her husband brought a big boom box with a recording device on it. Basically, he's wanting to sue me if I screw up. That's what he was there for, to get evidence of it. Oh. And when I started work with her, she kept screaming. She said, turn those bright lights off. And, of course, he was sitting there with me, and he looked at me stunned because the lights were down pretty low. Mm-hmm. He kept screaming, those lights are so bright they hurt my eyes. Leave my little brother alone. Screaming to the height of her voice. Of course, there's no one in the room but me, him, and her.
Right.
She's in the event for what it is. Yeah. And she's screaming. And what she didn't realize, because there was a third person in that room as well besides the alien, and it was a 17-year-old boy, and he painted a picture of her nude on the table with a 7-foot praying mantis over her, working on her, and her screaming all the time. I've got that picture.
Oof.
Now, when she came out of her trance, she said, see there, I told you it was wonderful. I was in the school of higher consciousness, and everything was wonderful. Of course, her husband had the whole recording of her screaming, leave my little brother alone and all that. You know, she doesn't know. And I don't mind. I'm not going to sit there and argue with her and tell her your events were horrible. You don't get it. I don't want it. If she can remember it as positive, I'm happy with that. I like that.
Yeah.
I don't mind.
Oh, my goodness.
If she'd rather believe a lie and be happy, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, that's right. That's her choice. But how, oh, boy. Now, the mantis is an interesting race. What do you know about them?
Well, as I said, the aliens, in my opinion, are all cloned, hatched, made, or manufactured. I don't think they're from outer space. I think the DNA comes from planet Earth, and the mantis being is a good illustration of them. Where would you get mantis DNA? Probably not Pluto, probably not Zeta Reticuli, but we have several hundred species of praying mantises on this planet. If you wanted to develop a 7-foot one and take it out in space and reprogram it and convince it that it's an alien and they're working for you from then on, that would be one of the 7 of the primary ones that are coming into contact with people during these days.
And I've heard that they are often in the background, or they are often the ones that are giving out the orders to the other alien groups. Does that sound right?
They're very smart. They're very smart. The little gray he's just a pizza delivery guy. He picks you up and delivers you. You're the pizza. The taller gray, the one they refer to as the doctor, he's the boss of the surgical procedures and things that are going to go on like that. He's boss over the little gray guys, and he's very awful to them. He's very nasty. The higher being, the beings above the grays, anybody above them, different from them, like the Nordic, the grays, the Nordic, the reptiles, and these entities, the mantis and so on. These beings are all above and beyond the grays for sure. They're just the worker ants, so to speak.
And I know you were saying some of them aren't very smart because when they put people's clothes back on, they put their underwear on backwards and things like that.
That's why people know something's wrong. If you have a double tumbler lock, which means you got to have a key to get in and a key to get out. In other words, if you left your keys, you can't. If you get dropped off out in your backyard instead of in your house, and that's happened before, you end up beating on the door trying to get your wife to let you in the house because you don't have any keys. Your keys are on the table. How did you get out of the house?
How'd you get out? Yeah, good point.
And your keys are right there on the table. So they do stuff like that. That lets people realize I was physically taken. One guy called me 2-3 days ago. He's got a special kind of watch. He said, I'll send you the program on it that shows that I've been at 450 feet up in the air in my abduction.
Oh,
and
my.
That's true. You can actually track people from those type devices.
That's interesting.
Sure.
So that is a level of proof that, thanks to those apps, we now have for somebody who was abducted.
That's right. We can run our own.
Somebody who was abducted probably a couple of years ago claimed that they had their cell phone camera on board a ship. Did you ever get to see those photos?
I hear this all the time, and sometimes I've had 4 or 5 people send me pictures of what they said was I took pictures of the alien on the craft and everything, and I see a big bunch of boxes stacked in a big room. It's really unclear, and never saw any big stack of boxes on an alien craft ever.
Yeah, that sounds kind of strange.
Makes me really wonder about their photography, and it's always unclear, and what they don't understand when you send me stuff like that, and if I have an interest in it, most of the time I don't, because I don't believe the whopper you're telling. I believe it's a screen memory at best, and if I happen to send it to one of my photo people who has several $1 million worth of equipment to evaluate things with, they're going to catch you so fast you're going to wish you'd never sent that. They'll tell you exactly how many times that photo has been altered, changed, and where the original photograph, what the date of the original photograph, not the one you sent me. You can't believe the hoaxes that we've uncovered.
I bet. And I hate that. I just wish that people would stop trying to fake things because it muddies the waters and it makes it so hard for the people who are telling the truth. and have real evidence.
If you can fool the alien hunter or somebody like that, feathering your cap.
Right.
Bud Hopkins was fooled by some cases. John Malk was fooled by some cases. Others have as well, other investigators. And people love doing that because these guys are honest and they want to get a good story. And they, unfortunately, they're not like me. They're not ex-cops. I'm going to, whenever you bring me all your stuff and say, oh, look at all my great stuff, I put my cop hat on. That's not a UFO hat anymore. It's a cop hat. How much does the cop believe of your story? None of it. What do you mean? You've got to convince him that an event actually happened and that what you're fixing to tell him is real.
That's right.
How many people lie to cops? When you get pulled over for speeding, the cop asks you how fast were you going, what's the general answer?
Oh, I wasn't
know.
speeding,
It's
officer.
A lot less than
yeah.
the speed limit. Yeah, people lie. They do all the time. And I mean, you know, they lie to me too, and I have to catch them doing it. But I teach how to determine whether people are lying or telling the truth just by watching them.
That's helpful to know.
They usually don't get very far.
No, I'm sure they don't get far at all, and that's a good thing.
Very good to know.
Now, Derrel, how can people get a hold of you if they have had an abduction or they've had something going on and they need some guidance? What's the best way for them to reach you?
The best way to reach me is to go to alienhunter.org, and you can click on there and alienhunter.org, and if you do that, you can go to the bottom there, and it'll say you can email the alien hunter, and you can do that. And I'll get your email, and I'll answer your email. It may take me a while because I get hundreds of emails, but I do answer every email. And if for any reason you don't get yours answered, then the best thing for you to do is write me again the second time and say, hey, bud, you didn't answer my question. And I'll probably look you up and find out that I didn't get your email. But I do answer them. So if you get it, you'll get an answer from me if I get your stuff.
Okay, that's great. And you've got a book also. Tell us about your book. What's the name of it?
I've got a couple of books. One is Alien Evidence. They're not written for entertainment. They're written to show you how to find evidence. One of them is on implants, and the other one is on how to find evidence of alien contact. And you can go to the website, and they're both there.
Okay, so people can buy them right from your website?
Right there on the website.
And are they also available on Amazon or just your website?
One of them is available on Amazon. But my best advice for you is to order them directly from us. You'll get them a lot quicker, and you'll like your experience. You really will.
Yeah, well, Derrel, you are the best. You are the top man when it comes to all of these things, and thank goodness you're here with us to really enlighten us and show us a whole different way of looking at these experiences. And I can't thank you enough, really. And my apologies to your wife for interrupting your dinner hour. Sorry about that. So hopefully she still has a plate of food that's warm for you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Great talking to you, Patricia.
Well, it's great talking to you, as always, Derrel. And you take care of yourself, and I will be in touch with you soon again, I'm sure. Now, next week, everybody, remember, we've got a 9:30 starting date, 9:30 p.m., with Ghost Hunters. Don't miss it. Until then, I will see you on the Blue Highway. Good night, everyone.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next week for another radio adventure with Supernatural.